It's an absolutely scorching day, and I've returned back to Budby South Forest today. I'm at the western end. I'm just walking through because I'm going to check for purple emperors flying around the tops of the trees at the junction with Budby and the Sherwood Forest Country Park area. But it's looking quite nice, especially on a day like this. It is a beautiful day. And you may have noticed, I am not wearing shoes. There's a reason for that. While I very much disagree with how Budby has been maintained, I don't like to see the needless pulling over of mature pine trees. That's totally unnecessary, and they have just been pulled over and uprooted, and it's done on the basis that the root plate creates plenty of habitat, nesting habitat for solitary bees. But when all the paths have been completely scraped, which is fine, I have no objection to that, that itself creates more than enough habitat for solitary bees. And then apart from the scrapes where the paths have been scraped and widened, there are scraped areas of bare ground which creates yet more habitat for solitary bees, and it's welcome habitat as well for solitary bees. But I don't see why, when the paths have been scraped to the extent they have, why additional areas of bare ground habitat have had to be created. But it's the needless pulling over of mature healthy trees that's a real bugbear of mine. There's no place for that in my conservation manual. Because I don't agree with the management practices on here or within the Sherwood Forest Country Park. It is my prerogative not to agree, but I'm not the only one either. I still like Budby, especially on a day like this, when there's just me and a handful of longhorn cattle well over there. You can never trust them. Though I suppose they're more trustworthy than most people. But I do like Budby. Say on a day like this, it's a cracking place. The unfortunate thing is that despite all the conservation efforts that are geared to looking towards the future and all that, a lot of the wildlife here has suffered. How do I know that? Well, I know that because for the best part of 30 years I've monitored it and recorded it. You tend to gather a few things by looking at the information and the records that you've gathered over several decades. Things aren't well here for many invertebrates. It's not so bad now. It seems as though efforts are being made not to overgraze it, but that has been certainly one of the big problems with Budby for a number of years. It's been extremely overgrazed. But the other big thing that I've never agreed with is the use of chemicals, and it's actually looks that they've used as a bracken control. Yes, I can see that bracken has diminished or at least been reduced in growth here, but at what cost? That's the thing that worries me. But as much as the RSPB and other management may disagree with me, there's still not the insects here that there was 20, 30 years ago. Well, you're probably still wondering why I haven't explained the lack of footwear. I've got footwear with me, but sometimes I just prefer to go barefoot. It's the most wonderful feeling. As long as you know where you're going to walk is safe, and the majority of it is. You're hardly likely to get anything in your foot. As long as you watch where you're going, you're absolutely fine. But the feeling of walking on grass is absolutely beautiful. If that grass is slightly damp as well, but lush grass, it's absolutely beautiful. It's very invigorating and uplifting walking barefoot, and the term I would use is that it grounds you with nature, and that's probably something you've never experienced since you was a child and you perhaps used to run around the garden with nothing on your feet. Then adults come along in their wisdom and tell you to put something on your feet. You don't know what you're treading. But it really is uplifting. I find it absolutely beautiful walking barefoot, even on a slightly stony, sandy track like this. It's absolutely fine. The ground is nice and warm and it's extremely pleasant. And walking through the bare grass that's around here is just lovely. As a society, we've completely lost touch with nature. And as much as there's a call for people to reconnect with nature, I think as a whole, as a society, we're still getting further and further away. Look at that bird. You see, how often, or when was the last time you sat down and just sat and listened? People don't experience the countryside now. They might walk through it, but as they're walking through it, they're gulping at the phone. But with that many neck problems in years to come, people with arthritic necks and certainly arthritic thumbs, they'll not be able to look anybody in the eye. But grounding yourself by walking barefoot, try it. Just go out on your lawn. It's just beautiful. And that's why I do it. I've done it before many times, just don't normally film it, but I thought I would do today because I couldn't care less. It just grounds you with nature and it makes you feel part of your environment. In this instance, Budby South Forest and heathland. It's just lovely. The soils and the ground's very warm. The grass is warm and dry. It's lovely, absolutely lovely. It's funny that although as a society we're becoming further and further away from our origins, but when people want to renew their acquaintance with their origins by just something simple like walking barefoot, on the ground. It might be something else, just returning to your roots, so to speak. The rest of society looks on them as though they're complete idiots. Look on them as though something gone out. However, it's those that are being looked on as idiots that are the ones that gain the most. They gain the most from their experience of walking barefoot. The rest of society just continues to drift further and further away from their origins, from nature, from their environment. Environment which is fast reducing with our need and lust for housing. Sites like this, easily accessible countryside, is lessening by the year.